Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of your Bish Therapist podcast. I am your host, Melissa Reich, your Bish Therapist, a real life therapist turned pop culture aficionado, here to serve clinical interpretations and hot takes on all things pop culture. Today's episode is going to be an announcement about the future of your Bish Therapist. Most people who are listeners, who follow me on Instagram, who watch me on YouTube, most people are not aware that your Bish Therapist was born in June of 2022. I started this whole endeavor. I had 2 followers on Instagram. One was my husband and the other was Amy Phillips. And just to remind you, for those of you who don't know, Amy Phillips is a comedian. She has a Patreon podcast called Drama Darling. She had a radio show on SiriusXM for 8 years. She does Cabaret Me. She does all these live shows. She is just really amazing. And most people do not realize that I got my start on her podcast. And some of my earlier episodes talk a little bit about where I got my name and how this all started. But, before I talk about, what the announcement is, I just wanted to give a little bit of a recap that, again, I went on Amy's show in May on a whim. We had been DMing on Instagram, and Amy calls herself. So by the way, this is where I get my name from. I also talk about this in earlier episodes of my podcast, but some people are confused about my name. For those of you who are Housewives fans, especially Real Housewives of New Jersey, you will know that there was one season where Joe Giudice, who used to be married to Teresa Giudice, there was an episode where he said, "Here she comes, my bitch wife." And he goes on to call her a C and to insult her. And it was one of the wildest moments on Real Housewives. I mean, now there's a million more, but back in the day, that was pretty significant. So Amy Phillips used to call herself your bitch wife. And when I was DMing back and forth with her, I was joking that I am her bitch therapist. And so that is how we became friendly. That is how she had me on her show. And when she had me on her show, I was a one and done. I was a therapist who was going to give some takes on Bravo and Housewives. In fact, the first time I went on Amy's show, your Bish Therapist wasn't even born. I had a private Instagram, and that was it. I had nothing to promote. So the reason that I'm sharing this is your Bish Therapist has grown beyond my wildest dreams. I sincerely, when I started this in June, I had zero expectations. I had no, I was hopeful, but there was no part of me that thought that this was going to be really successful. I wasn't sure how people would receive it. I wasn't sure how people would receive me. I'm a regular person. I've been a therapist my whole life. I have never even been really on social media. I have a hard time with social media, so for me, when this all started, I started with 2 followers and, now I have 4,500 and growing. And so my point is that when I started this, I had no idea what I was doing. And especially if you go back to some of those first episodes, I mean, they are wildly terrible. In my opinion, I'm sure people think that they're fine, but I listen to them and I just kind of cringe. So I don't listen anymore. But I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to record myself. I didn't know how to upload I just didn't know how to do any of it. So for me, this whole experience has kind of just been really experimental. And I started it with no expectations. So what I'm here to talk about today is kind of, for me, where your bitch therapist is going in the future. After a great deal of, I thought about this a lot. I consulted Amy, because by the way, Amy is just one of the most amazing people I've ever met. She has been um, you know, in the media, she's been in the business she for so long, but she's just like a really genuine, amazing person. She's my fairy godmother. She's my creative mentor. She I wouldn't have any of this without her. Let me be clear about that. Um, she is just a wonderful person. And so when I was talking to her about my vision for, what is this going to be? Um, she and I came up with some, ideas, and I wanted to share a little bit with you all where this was going to be going. Initially, my goal was to do a weekly podcast with every intention of making this a full-time show. Initially, I wanted to do this 5 days a week, 4 days a week. I wanted to, start with one and build from there. Um, and what people have come to love about me is my deep dives. I have, I have meticulous attention to detail when I'm talking about things. And I'm just really thoughtful about, taking the information, analyzing it, and then giving it to you all. And in fairness, when I started this, I had no idea how much energy this was going to take. Most people watching this, listening to this, who, take it in fairness, have no idea how much it takes. It's so much work. I do graduate level homework. Excuse me. I'm a little bit under the weather. I do graduate level work on a weekly basis. It's like, and here's the thing, I'm such a psychology nerd and I'm super dorky. I loved school. Loved homework. I didn't mind it. But what's different now is me and my body. I am about to be, in a couple months, I'll be 43 years old. Most of you know that I am living with a chronic cancer and a ton of other chronic health issues. And also, my mental health, I have to really be mindful of that, as well as most people with chronic illness do. It's really tough on your mental health as well. So what I have realized through doing what I'm doing is the fact that my current setup is unsustainable. So listen, don't panic. I'm not going anywhere. We're just making some changes. So for those of you who are kind of panicked right now, just hear me out. It's, for me, every day with my body is a new adventure, because so there's something called spoon theory for people who have a chronic illness, chronic cancer, what have you, is that regular, reasonably healthy folks, when they wake up, you have an unlimited amount of spoons. You can do whatever you need to do, work, go to the gym, have fun, whatever. People like me, we wake up with a finite number of spoons, and every day it's different. Some days there could be plenty, and some days there can be very few. And so I have to think about, okay, so if I have 10 spoons today, how am I, what am I doing? Do I go to PT and do my exercises? Do I, I have to make some choices about how to best spend my time and energy. And prior to this, Your Bish Therapist, I did talk about in some of my earlier podcasts, I had a really hard time during the pandemic. I had to walk away from my practice because my health, it was too precarious. It was too dangerous. My oncologist did not recommend continuing, to do work while, COVID was going on and things like that. So, and to be honest, the last few years of my life have been an experiment in and of itself. Just for me, like as a human, I'm just like every day experimenting with, what am I capable of? What can I do today? Things like that. And so it's, in fairness, it's confusing for me. So I also understand if it's confusing to you. Um, and the thing is, for me, my entire life, I've been really good at hiding and concealing my pain and my struggle. I present, first of all, I look great. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, I do my YouTubes with no makeup. This is just what my skin looks like. In fact, I have proof. I have a little zit right here on my face. So ladies in your 40s who are still getting zits, I feel you. I feel your pain. 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever it is. Anywho, so for me, I have to make what I call reasonable accommodations, which just means if I'm going to do something like this, I can't do hair and makeup every time I do it because I just don't have the energy to do it. So one of my reasonable accommodations is, guess what? I am in front of thousands of people who are watching this, and I certainly don't look my best, but guess what? To do this, it's what I need to do, and that's okay. My point is that you can't always tell by looking at folks where they're at, because I look healthy. I look happy, which I am. I am happy. I'm a happy, joyful person. But, we can't look at people and always know their capabilities, which is hence the term invisible illness. So for those of you struggling with invisible illness, I see you. You valid. I see you. At least if my looks matched how I felt inside, people would be like, oh, wow, she is really on the struggle bus. But they don't. So I guess that's a blessing. But the thing is I have had no idea what this was going to turn into. And I just feel that, for me, it's been really challenging to do these weekly podcasts. I have a lot of appointments that I do for my self-care every week. I have, I need time to rest and rejuvenate and, to do just regular adult things, grocery shop and clean and all these other things. So what frustrates me the most, I'll be honest, is that I have the mind of someone who is incredibly motivated and capable, smart, intelligent, funny, all these things, but in the body of someone who is not so on board with some of those tasks. And so I love this podcast. I love the amazing community of people that have been built. I have, friends on Instagram that I've met, friends that I've just met through doing this process, some connections that I've made. It's just been one of the most amazing experiences of my life. But I had to have a real conversation about how well does this work for me? People, which I appreciate, they always, they want more and more and more. And I totally get that. And that's the goal for me. So here's what this is going to boil down to. I am continuing the podcast, period. I'm continuing it. However, I'm going to make some changes in how I continue the podcast, and I have to have some boundaries around it for me and my own well-being, which, trust me, I'm not incredibly thrilled about this, but it's part of the grief of dealing with chronic illness is that there has to be acceptance of capabilities. I, back in the day when I was healthier, I was a powerhouse. I was capable of so much. And now I'm mentally capable, but physically just have to adjust a little bit. So here is what this is going to look like. What I call a win-win solution. By the way, I encourage everybody to look at problem solving through trying to make it win-win solutions. So there's win-win, there's win-lose, and there's lose-lose. A win-win is where everybody in the situation wins. It's not just one person. So a win-win solution that I have created for the listeners and myself is that I am going to start doing seasons of Your Bish Therapist podcast. Okay, so what does that mean? What that means is that I am going to finish up this first season next week. Now, I have promised, and I'm going to keep that promise, to have my season finale episode about the twin flame universe. I have posted about this on my Instagram. I've gotten some questions from folks. Some folks have emailed me. So there are a couple different shows about this twin flame, whatever they call it. I'll call it a cult. So the twin flame cult, there is a show on Netflix called Escaping Twin Flames, but there is also, thank you to the listeners who informed me of this. I really, really appreciate that. On Amazon Prime, there is another 4-part series about the twin flame universe, but from the perspective of Jeff and Shalia's friends. So I am going to rewatch the Netflix series. I'm going to watch the series on Amazon Prime. And then there is also a podcast that is narrated by the beautiful Stephanie Beatriz. For those of you who don't know, I'm a huge Brooklyn Nine-Nine fan, and Stephanie Beatriz, she played Rosa Diaz, and she narrates that podcast. And so I'm going to listen to that as well. So I just needed a little bit more time to ingest all of that media, 8 hours of TV, and then there's another 8 hours of the podcast. And so the point is that what I do takes a lot of time. I don't just, recap. And listen, this is no shade to anybody else. There are a lot of, there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of Bravo people that they do amazing work and they recap and they're hilarious. For me, what I do, it takes so much time and thought and interpretation. And I just didn't realize how exhausting that would be, but I don't want to change the format, right? Because that's what you all have come to love. And I love it too, doing that. For me, it's intellectually stimulating. It's, during COVID, I thought my brain was mush. I thought I had lost all my skills. And so this has kind of helped me realize, like, no, your girl still got it. So there's lots of reasons that I just adore this. But what's not sustainable is doing an episode every week. I have not been able to engage in the self-care that I've needed to engage in. I have not been able to attend all the appointments that I need to attend for my health and well-being. So I think this is a beautiful solution. So here's what this is going to look like. Next week's season finale, again, Escaping Twin Flames. I'm going to ingest all of that content, which is sincerely a little bit daunting. And I'm going to be honest, the topic and the content is daunting too, because there's some very serious aspects of this in terms of gender identity and how that has gotten warped for some folks. And so there's very sensitive, very heavy issues. And I want to make sure to address it with the utmost respect, care, and concern, and most importantly, knowledge. I am a bit of a perfectionist, and so I want to make sure everything that I'm saying is thoroughly researched and vetted, and I'm speaking facts, and I'm, all of that stuff. So the catch-22 of doing what I do is that it's great and it's wonderful, but it also is really taxing. So here's what will happen. Next week will be the season 1 finale. I will be taking off December and first 2 weeks of January, and then season 2 of Your Bitch Therapist will start mid-January. I have some awesome things in the pipeline. I have been able to make some cool connections through doing this. So I do have a couple professionals lined up to do some interviews with about eating disorders and the media. I have a dear friend who has her PhD in sexual health and development, and she will be coming on to talk a little bit about sex and love addiction. And there's somebody else that I reached out to, but I don't want to talk about that yet. So I'm just hoping that season 2 of Your Bitch Therapist, I do want it to be some of the same of what I'm doing, but I do also want to take it to a bigger level in terms of having some professionals on and things like that. So let me be clear, for me, this is not an ending. This is the beginning of some really beautiful stuff. I just have to be a little bit patient. I want Your Bish Therapist to be long term for me. For example, I keep all of my notes because my hope is to do a book. I've always wanted to write a book, and so for me, I do have, some ideas and some thoughts and some connections there. So TBD. I also, would like to just do a lot of really amazing things with this. I would like to eventually do live shows. I have a lot of people in this community that, are on the East Coast. And, I'm from Illinois. I would love to do a show in Illinois. I have a lot of folks and family and friends and people there that I would love to just connect with and do a live show. So to be clear, the announcement is that I want to do some wonderful things. I just respectfully ask that you're willing to be patient with me as I do them in the time that I need to do them. I understand people might have feelings about this. Some people may not be thrilled. I get that. And listen, I'm full disclosure, I'm nervous about this. I am, nervous about, I don't want to lose listeners. I don't want to lose, people in the community. I don't want that. But at the same time, for the first time in my life, and I'm saying this sincerely, I'm choosing me and what's best for me. Despite my fears around, taking a break, a little bit of a break. So that's a win for me, but, it also kind of sucks, and that's, just a friendly reminder. Sometimes personal growth, it's like, it can be great, but it can also be like, wah, wah. So, it really is a double-edged coin. So I hope this makes sense. I'm just looking over some of my other notes here. Oh, okay. So here's what I wanted to say. So up until this point, I have released 16 episodes. Okay. So by next week, when I do the final season finale, there will be 17. And I will say this, that the season finale with Twin Flames, it's either going to be a supersized episode or it might be so long I have to break it into 2. But either way, I will release them on the same day. So my point is that 17, maybe 18 episodes for season 1. And I mean, that's a lot. Again, considering that when I started this, I had no idea even how to do any of this. I'm like, oh, Melissa, great job. So I'm going to share with you guys right now, for those of you who, because I do have a link tree on my Instagram page that has all the links to everything that I've ever done. But I know sometimes, navigating that in social media doesn't, come easy for everybody. So I'm going to share with you each episode, and I'm going to give you a snippet of what it's about, so that if during the time that I'm taking my little break, if you haven't listened to all the episodes, there are truly so many to listen to. So what I suggest people do is they get caught up for season 2. The other thing that I am going to for sure do is, number 1, I'm going to still be active on my Instagram, but not necessarily every day. The other, the thing about me too, is I've never been a fan of social media. I crave authenticity. And to me, social media is the antithesis of that. And so I've always really just not loved social media. I've never been a fan of it. So for me, this whole your bitch therapist thing, there's two sides to that coin too, right? Because I'm not sure if you guys are aware of this, but people on the internet are really mean. Understatement of the year. And listen, I have wonderful people who are amazing and loving and sweet. But, what is interesting on the internet, it's kind of, it's black and white. There's not a lot of gray area. So it's either people love you or they hate you. And either way, they're going to tell you about it. So, I'm a tough cookie. I've been through a lot. I have a really thick skin, but at the end of the day, I also just need a break from social media. The world is in a tough place. I feel like it can get very toxic, and I know that other people are feeling it too. I've seen some other Bravo accounts just say that they needed to take a break and things like that. So if you need a break from social media, I say, listen to your heart and do that. But I will be posting on Instagram because here's what I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to getting back to watching all my Bravo shows. Sometimes I haven't been able to thoroughly watch them because I'm focusing on doing other things. So when I watch all of the shows that we love and I talk about, if I do feel called to post something, I will. I will certainly continue to post stories. And the one thing that I can commit to doing for you all is that the holidays are coming up. This week is Thanksgiving. For those who celebrate that. And it's also Indigenous. There's a holiday on Friday, Indigenous Peoples Day, um, Native American Heritage Day. There's an acknowledgement of the day after Thanksgiving of the Indigenous folks, which is something really important and special. So I do want to acknowledge that as well. But, so with those holidays coming up with, Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever holidays you all celebrate or not. Again, I have people in other countries and, all over the globe. So whatever it is that you have coming up, for a lot of folks, it is a really tricky time of year. We're around family. That can be inherently difficult and problematic. Sometimes we're not around family because we're estranged, and that is inherently difficult as well. So my commitment is that around it's sometime in December, I will pop on to do a brief podcast about some tips and tricks to kind of manage mental health and wellness over the holidays, amongst maybe the chaos, the dark, the cold, whatever it is, so that I can commit to doing. I'll talk a little bit about coping strategies and how to, just kind of manage that. That is definitely something that I will do. And, for me, I think slow and steady wins the race. I would love to just continue to bang out episodes every week. That's just, as I mentioned, that's just not sustainable. So for me, I have to take, I have to take the lead of my body, and I have to say, well, slow and steady wins the race. So, okay, so I'm the turtle. Okay, great. Well, watch me. Just watch me. That's all I'm saying, because I have some really big plans and I'm very excited. So, next, I'm going to just talk a little bit about the episodes that I do have. This isn't going to be long, so don't worry. I'm just going to, for those of you who maybe haven't listened or haven't watched on YouTube, I just wanted to share some information about some episodes you might not even know about. Okay, so the first episode that I did was August 16th, the maiden voyage of YBT. So that episode is sincerely just me being like, hi, holy crap, I'm here. What am I doing? I'm a normal person. Like it, I'm sure it might be amusing to listen to. I have a super high squeaky voice in the first, couple of episodes. So that's kind of a nightmare for me, but you know what? whatever. Um, Second episode was a supersized, like I think it was like an hour and a half episode called Wow, Bethany, Wow, Please Don't Let It Be About HIPAA. It's about HIPAA. And that was when, remember, Bethany did the Rachel Leviss interview. So that episode was about that whole interview. And then the third episode was called Aftershocks of the Aftermath, which again was about, and this was um in August. I don't know if you guys remember this, but Bethany, after the interview, she got a lot of flack. And so she released some sort of a podcast called The Aftershocks or The Aftermath or something like that. So that podcast was about Bethany, her, podcast after that. And what you'll notice is that that's the last time I talk about Bethany. And so I will tell you all, that's the last time I'm going to talk about Bethany, because for me, what was apparent in those episodes, Bethany just really shit on content creators like myself who were small, who were, she called us losers. She called us a lot of different things. And I just, I'm not into that. I was offended, and I just think it's super rude. So, for me, Bethany enjoys when people talk about her. So for me, I'm just not gonna. So if you want to hear me talk about her, then those are the podcasts. Otherwise, that's all you're going to hear from me about her. Now, episode 4, it's the one where your bitch therapist tells her story. So this episode was about me making a wish through the Make-A-Wish Foundation and meeting the cast of Friends, which was very serendipitous because I did the podcast before Matthew Perry passed. And I just talk about my experience with that. For those of you who don't know, I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. My first cancer, I was not supposed to live. I was 17, so I got to make a wish. And so that episode is all about that. Episode 5 was the Jeff Lewis, Heather McDonald, Justin Martindale drama triangle. And my word, that was my most listened to and watched episode. It got a ton of attention, and it also got me a ton of hate. All I'm going to say about that is after that episode aired, I got massively attacked on social media, and I'm not going to be more specific about that. But then when I acknowledged being attacked, people got mad at that. I don't know. It was one of the weirdest experiences of my life. And again, for that reason, I'm not going to be covering that anymore. I know there's a lot of folks out there who like to cover Jeff and Heather. I don't want that smoke. And for me, it got me a lot of attention. I could easily continue to do that and get a lot of views and stuff. But for me, my peace is priceless, and I choose peace. So, okay. So then there was a bonus episode that I did called Addiction Among Housewives. And this was after Shannon Bedore got her DUI. For those of you who don't know, I was a addictions therapist at I should say I was an addictions therapist at an inpatient residential treatment facility in Pennsylvania called Marworth. And so I have a lot of experiences with that. So after Shannon got her DUI, I just decided to do a bonus episode, because addiction and problematic alcohol use or substance use has been a topic of housewives, since the beginning, whether it's been with the kids, with the housewives, whatever. So, that is what that episode is about. That was a bonus episode. Episode 6 is a Bravo News roundup where I just tried something new, but people did not like it. With that episode, I did a couple of different discussions about, shows that week, Southern Charm, I think, and other things. People didn't love it because they like my signature deep dives. They like when I focus on one topic and I kind of go in really deep. So again, here's the thing. If I did more of a news roundup, I could probably do more episodes, but that's not what people are interested in. So I have to honor that. Then the next episode 9 is the Real Housewives of New York reunion : grief tornado. about, the Roni reboot. It was very heavy with grief, so I did an episode on that. Then episode 10, there's something about Mary Cosby. Now, this episode, I have to toot my own horn, and I have to say, if you haven't listened to it, you really should, because I do a humongous deep dive into the Cosby family tree, into the Bravo Docket ladies. They did an episode about like the legalities of it and the legal stuff. And I got their permission to take some of their podcast and report some of that information, because I'm a therapist. I'm not a lawyer, so that's an area that is not my expertise. So they assisted me with that. And by the way, Bravo Docket ladies, we've talked about doing a little bit of a collab in the future. So hope to bring you that as well. Oh, wait, I'm going in wrong directions. Okay, I'm sorry. Bear with me for a second. So episode 6 was the Bravo News Roundup. So episode 7 was the Murdaugh Murders, a legacy of generational wealth and trauma. That one got a lot of attention because I also did a crazy deep dive, tons of family tree stuff. I really went in hard for that. So that was really great. Episode 8 was Real Housewives of Orange County and Southern Charm. Episode 9 is the Kim and Corey Bierman saga, which, my God, those two. And honestly, I stopped covering that too, because I feel like people are bored with it. It's like they're on again, they're off again. I mean, the family is really going through it. So episode 10 was Mary Cosby. So I'm sorry, I just got the numbers wrong. 10 was something about Mary Cosby and the Cosby family. And there are a lot of really amazing snippets in there about murder, possible murder. Yeah, some real intense stuff. So then episode 11 was Real Housewives of New York Reunion, the Grief Tornado. Episode and that also featured Southern Charm as well, because Southern Charm, it was when Olivia's brother died, and so there was just like a lot of grief, so I covered that. And episode 12, I did a tribute to my friend Matt after Matthew Perry died, and I also did an episode on Everybody Loves Tom. So Tom Sandoval had Dr. Drew on the show, and they did a narcissism test, and I just completely busted through that. I mean, it is a little nerdy, but I talk about, psychometric scales and, the validity of them and what makes them valid and why this one really wasn't valid. So that was super interesting. Episode 13 is called Listen, Linda, and that is about the relationship between Monica Garcia and her mom. And in that, I talk about narcissistic abuse and narcissistic parents, and things like that. And then my recent episode 14, is called Be the Light. And that's where I share my personal experience helping the Pennsylvania State Police talk someone down who is having some mental health issues. And I did it just as a citizen, as a bystander. I wasn't doing it in a professional capacity. So that was a long story that I did cover. So my point is that for those of you who are bummed out or might be frustrated, there's still tons of content for you to take in, and B, there will be tons more content for you to take in just in January. So that's kind of it. And I appreciate all of the support and the love and the kindness and the friendship. This continues to be one of the coolest, most exciting things that I've ever done. And I just appreciate how much people appreciate it. I appreciate you all. So I just want to be super clear about that. So for those of you who are celebrating Thanksgiving this week, I just enjoy, take a breath when you're around family. My one piece of advice going out is don't argue with people. Whether it's about politics or, the state of affairs of whatever, I find with that stuff, really, with family, we're not going to change people's minds unless you're able to have a healthy conversation about it. I would say just don't engage. There's plenty of other things to talk about. Family memories, how good the food is, if you like turkey. I know some people, it's like a love or a hate. So, please just take care. of yourselves and each other. And, again, let's not forget to be the light in the world we want to see. So stay tuned for next week's season 1 finale of Your Bish Therapist about the Twin Flames universe. It's going to be a banger. I'm going to go out with a bang. So I look forward to that. And until then, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Disclaimer. Posts are not intended to diagnose, treat, or provide medical advice. Your Bish Therapist is for entertainment and informational purposes only. The podcast, my opinions, and posts are my own and not associated with past or present employers, any organizations, Bravo TV, Greyheart Productions, or any other television network. The information in YBT podcast and on its social media is provided for general informational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat. Please do not act or refrain from acting based on anything you read, see, hear on YBT podcast or associated social media. Communicating with YBT via email and or social media does not form a therapeutic alliance. Melissa, operator of YBT, is unable to provide any therapeutic advice, treatment, or feedback.